Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about a topic that creates a lot of confusion in schools: the difference between HIPAA and FERPA. If you work in a school system, especially in special education, you may handle student information every day. That information may include evaluations, therapy notes, IEP documents, behavior data, health-related information, attendance, progress reports, and communication with parents or outside providers. The big question is, which law applies? Many educators hear health information and automatically think HIPAA, but in schools, that is not always the case. In many situations, FERPA is the law that controls how student records are protected. The goal of this presentation is to make the difference clear and practical. We're not trying to turn everyone into a lawyer. We are trying to help school staff know when to pause, ask questions, follow district procedure, and protect student confidentiality. The confusion usually starts because both HIPAA and FERPA deal with privacy, but they focus on different types of records. HIPAA is mainly about protecting health information. It usually applies to healthcare providers, health plans, and healthcare clearinghouses. FERPA is about protecting educational records. In a school system, many records related to a student's services, progress, evaluations, therapy, and disability may be considered educational records. This is where staff can get confused. A speech-language pathologist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, nurse, counselor, psychologist, or special education teacher may work with information that sounds medical or therapeutic. But if that information is maintained by the school and connected to the student's educational program, FERPA often applies. The practical takeaway is this: do not assume HIPAA applies just because the information sounds health related. In school settings, ask whether the information is part of the student's educational record. In most school settings, FERPA is the main law that governs students' records. That includes many records related to special education. For example, IEPs, evaluations, progress reports, related service notes, therapy documentation, and educational planning records are typically part of the student's educational record. So when a school-based therapist documents services connected to a student's IEP, that information is generally being handled within the educational system. That means FERPA is usually the law guiding parent access, confidentiality, and record protection. This is important for educators because we often hear staff say, "I cannot share that because of HIPAA." But in many school-based situations, the better question is, what does FERPA and district policy allow? School staff should protect student information carefully, but they should also understand that FERPA gives parents certain rights to access and review their child's educational records. This slide is very important. Sharing student information requires care and, in many situations, written consent. Whether we're talking about FERPA or HIPAA, educators should never casually share student information. Student records should only be shared with people who have a legitimate educational interest or with proper consent when required. For example, if a teacher, therapist, case manager, or administrator is part of the school team serving the student, information may be shared internally when it is needed to support the student's education. However, sharing information outside the school system is different. If the information is going to an outside doctor, private therapist, community provider, or agency, parent consent is usually needed before that information is released. The safe school practice is simple. Pause before sharing. Ask yourself, who is receiving the information? Why do they need it? Is this within the school system or outside the school system? Do we have written parent consent? What does district policy require? Now let's look at communication with outside healthcare providers. This is one of the moments when HIPAA may become more relevant. If a school-based provider needs to share student information with a physician, psychologist, private therapist, hospital, clinic, or other outside healthcare provider, the rules may shift depending on the situation. For school staff, the most important point is not to send records or details just because someone asks. A doctor's office, a private therapist, or an outside clinic may request information, but the school must follow proper consent and release procedures. For example, if a parent wants the school speech therapist to communicate with the child's outside speech therapist, the school should obtain a signed release of information before exchanging student records or therapy information. This protects the student, the family, and the staff member. It also keeps the school system aligned with privacy expectations. This slide addresses electronic health records, also called EHRs. Some school systems may use a student information system or special education documentation system. Others may use separate health-related platforms, nursing systems, Medicaid billing platform, or electronic health record systems. The key question is, where is the record stored? Who controls the system? And what is the purpose of the record? If the information is maintained as part of the school's educational record system, FERPA may govern it. If the school or provider is using separate electronic health record system for health services, billing, or medical documentation, HIPAA may come into play. For educators, this means we need to be careful with digital tools. Do not upload student information into random platforms, personal drives, unsecure apps, or third-party tools without district approval. A good rule is this: if the tool has student information in it, the district should know about it, approve it, and provide guidance on how it should be used. When related services are billed to Medicaid or private insurance, HIPAA may apply to the handling of protected health information for billing purposes. This matters because some schools receive reimbursement for services such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, physical therapy, nursing, or other eligible services. The documentation used for billing may include service dates, provider information, student information, diagnosis codes, treatment details, or service descriptions. Educators and related service providers should understand that billing records may have additional privacy requirements. Staff should not treat billing documentation casually. If you're involved in Medicaid billing or service documentation, follow district training carefully. Make sure service logs are accurate, timely, and professional. Do not include unnecessary information. Only document what is required and appropriate. The practical message is this: when student information is used for billing, privacy rules become especially important. Now let's talk about telehealth or telepractice. Since many schools now use virtual services, this is an important area. If a related service provider delivers services remotely, privacy and security must be considered. That includes the platform being used, where the student is located, who can hear the session, how records are stored, and how communication is protected. For example, a speech therapy session held through a district-approved platform is very different from a session held through an unapproved video app. Staff should use approved systems, follow district telepractice procedures, and avoid recording sessions unless there's a clear permission and legitimate need. Telepractice can be a powerful tool, especially when there are staffing shortages or access issues. But privacy must be built into the process. The key question is, are we protecting the student's information as carefully online as we would in person? This slide focuses on sharing information with parents. Under FERPA, parents generally have the right to access their child's educational records. That includes records maintained by the school that are directly related to the student. For educators, this means parents are not outsiders to the process. Parents are part of the educational decision-making team, especially in special education. However, staff should still communicate carefully and professionally. Sharing information with parents does not mean sending unfiltered notes. Informal comments or information about other students. When communicating with parents, keep the focus on their child. Use clear language. Avoid jargon when possible. Be factual, respectful, and student-centered. If the information is sensitive or involve health-related details, follow district guidance. Some situations may require extra care, especially if there are custody issues, outside providers, or sensitive medical information involved. The practical takeaway is this: parents have rights, but staff still need to share information through appropriate channels and with professional care. Let's pause for reflection. In most school settings, FERPA guides how student records are protected. HIPAA may apply when information is shared outside the school system, used for billing, stored in a separate health record system, or connected to telehealth services. Here are the key questions educators should ask before sharing information. Is this information part of the student's educational record, health record, or both? Is the information being shared within the school team or with someone outside the school system? Has parent consent been obtained before sharing personally identifiable or sensitive information? These questions help staff slow down and make better decisions. Here's a practical example. A student receives speech therapy at school and also sees a private speech therapist. The private therapist emails the school asking for therapy progress notes. Before sending anything, the school-based therapist should check for written parent consent and follow district procedure. The goal is not to make communication harder. The goal is to make communication safe, legal, and respectful. Before we leave, let's apply what we learned. The exit ticket question is, a school-based therapist wants to share student therapy progress notes with an outside healthcare provider. What should the therapist consider before sharing the information? A strong answer would include several points. First, determine whether the information is part of the student's educational record. Second, identify whether the information is being shared outside the school system. Third, confirm whether written parent consent is required and has been obtained. Fourth, follow school district's procedure. Fifth, use a secure method of communication. This is the kind of thinking we want all school staff to practice. Before sharing student information, pause and check the purpose, the person, the permission, and the process. That simple habit can prevent major confidentiality mistakes. HIPAA typically applies when a school-based provider is interacting with healthcare system outside medical providers, billing systems, or certain health record systems. FERPA generally takes the lead when information is maintained by the school and used within the educational context. For educators, the easiest way to remember the difference is this. FERPA usually follows the school record. HIPAA usually follows the healthcare record. But there can be exceptions, so school staff should not guess. When in doubt, check with your special education administrator, student service department, compliance officer, or district legal guidance. The goal is not to memorize every legal detail. The goal is to know when to pause, protect student information, and ask the right question. As we close, I want to connect this topic to the Data King mindset. Data King is about helping educators use information responsibly, clearly, and effectively. In special education, data is powerful, but student data must also be protected. IEPs, evaluations, therapy notes, progress monitoring, Medicaid documentation, and parent communication all tell an important story about the student. That story must be handled with care. My goal is to help educators, related service providers, and school leaders understand these topics in a practical way, not just from a compliance checklist, but from the real-world perspective of schools, IEP meetings, student services, and daily decision-making. If you follow Data King, you will get practical guidance on special education, compliance, data use, school leadership, and better decision-making for students with disabilities. Thank you for the work you do in schools. Protecting student information is not just a legal responsibility. It is part of building trust in families and protecting the dignity of every student. Thank you and goodbye.